The master of magnetism awakens to a sky bleeding impossible colors. His body is suspended above an endless sea of metal and machinery. Billions of tons of steel call to him, each piece alive with strange machine spirits that whisper of worship and war. As imperial sirens wail across the toxic forge world of Festus 9, Magneto feels the familiar weight of persecution closing in around him. The Mechanicus hails him as divine, while the Inquisition brands him heretical. But in a galaxy where mankind worships a corpse emperor and burns worlds rather than embrace evolution, will Magneto become its destroyer or its salvation? The Imperium howled. Reality tore open with unnatural violence, its rupture spilling impossible colors across the void above Hephaestus 9. The Forge World's defense monitors registered the anomaly with binary urgency, cogitators straining to classify the phenomenon that defied imperial categorization. Through this bleeding wound between dimensions came a single figure, his form tiny against the cosmic violation that had birthed him into this universe. The man tumbled through the void, unconscious, a trail of frost crystallizing on his purple-clad form. Auger arrays throughout the Mechanicus orbital platforms locked onto the intruder, tracking his descent toward the planet's atmosphere. Savant calculators predicted impact coordinates, while engine seers prepared recovery protocols for what they assumed was merely another piece of archaeotech debris cast forth from the warp's churning tides. They could not have been more wrong. Eric Lensher awoke to fire. His body burned as Hephaestus 9's upper atmosphere embraced him with superheated fingers. Consciousness returned with brutal clarity. The magnetic fields of the Forge World suddenly became visible to his unique senses, like luminous webs of force stretching across reality. He reached out with his power, instinctively grasping those fields and bending them to his will. His fall slowed, then stopped. Suspended 20 kilometers above the planet's surface, Magneto's mind reeled with confusion. The magnetic tapestry surrounding him was unlike anything he had ever experienced, impossibly complex, alive with currents that seemed to possess intelligence beyond mere physical law. Below him stretched a world covered in industrial sprawl beyond comprehension, belching columns of smoke that reached toward him like grasping fingers. Where am I? His words were lost to the thin air, but the question burned in his mind as he extended his senses downward, probing the metal world below. The answer came not in words, but in sensations, overwhelming his consciousness. Billions of tons of metal, machinery unlike anything from his world, all of it saturated with strange energies that resonated with his powers. And within that mechanical orchestra, the discordant screams of human suffering, of flesh and metal joined in unholy communion, of worship directed toward unseen masters. Magneto's eyes narrowed as memories of another camp, another time where humans worshipped cruelty and called it necessity, flooded back to him. "Never again," he whispered. He descended toward the world of metal and misery below, unaware that dozens of cogitators were already marking his trajectory, calculating his threat potential, and dispatching the first of many forces that would attempt to contain a power beyond their understanding. In the orbital monitoring station Panopticon Gamma, Magos Dominus Veritas stood motionless before an array of flickering hololithic displays. Only the occasional twitching of the mechanodendrite sprouting from his back betrayed any sign of emotion as he observed the anomaly's controlled descent. "Most curious," he intoned, his voice box producing mechanically modulated words. "The subject displays no signs of propulsion technology, yet defies gravitational constants." "The anomaly emerged directly from warp space," replied his subordinate, Magus Biologus Fex, her red robes rustling as her own augmented limbs manipulated data slates. Could it be a manifestation of the ruinous powers? Veritas processed this query, augments whirring as they refocused. Negative. Geller field integrity was maintained throughout the sector. No demonic incursion markers present. He extended a mechanodendrite to interface directly with the command console. "We are witnessing something unprecedented. Deploy Adeptus reconnaissance units to the projected landing zone. Stealth protocols."
And if the entity proves hostile, Veritas disconnected from the console, his mechanical face incapable of showing the excitement building within his still human brain, then we will have the honor of presenting the Omnia with a new specimen for study. Hephaestus IX's surface was a monument to the machine god's glory. Vast hive factories stretched across entire continents, their industrial cathedral spires reaching toward the permanently darkened sky. Toxic rivers flowed between manufacturing districts, carrying waste products that would have killed any unaugmented human instantly. The air itself was a miasm of chemical compounds, maintained at precisely the minimum quality required to sustain the billions of human workers that toiled within the forges. Magneto landed in a relatively isolated area, a waste disposal sector where mountains of mechanical refuse rose like jagged monuments to industrial excess. As his feet touched the ground, he felt a strange sensation, as if the very metal beneath him was responding to his presence, vibrating at frequencies that matched his own mutant powers.
He took a moment to survey his surroundings, extending his senses through the metallic landscape. The information that flooded back to him was overwhelming. Billions of humans and machines, their life energies intertwined in ways that both fascinated and horrified him. And something else. A presence that seemed to flow through all technology around him, a ghostly intelligence that reminded him of the sentient machines he had encountered in his own world. Before he could process this further, his senses warned him of approaching entities. Magneto turned, raising a hand defensively as several figures emerged from behind a pile of discarded mechanical components. They moved with inhuman precision, their bodies a grotesque fusion of flesh and metal. Red robes partially concealed their augmentations, but nothing could hide the weapons integrated into their limbs, already humming with potent energy. "Identify yourself, anomaly," commanded the lead figure, its voice crackling with electronic distortion. "By the authority of the Omnia and the blessed Fabricator General, you will submit to examination." Magneto regarded the cyborgs with wary curiosity. "I am Magneto, and I submit to no one. I seek only to understand where I am and how I came to be here." The Skitarii Ranger's optical sensors flared, data streaming back to its controllers. Subject designates itself Magneto, displaying no known imperial, xenos, or heretical markings, registering unprecedented electromagnetic disturbances. It raised its galvanic rifle. "You will comply with examination protocols or face immediate neutralization." Magneto sensed the weapon's power, the electrical potential building within its circuits. With a casual gesture, he reached out with his abilities and touched the rifle's internal mechanisms. The weapon immediately fell silent, its machine spirit suddenly responding to a new master. "I think not," Magneto calmly replied. The Skitarii Ranger attempted to fire, but its weapon remained inert. In rapid succession, it drew a backup pistol, only to have that weapon similarly disabled. Around him, the other Rangers experienced the same phenomenon, their weapons refusing to function. "Interesting," Magneto mused, studying the half-machine soldiers with analytical detachment. "Your weapons contain spirits, intelligences that respond to my power. I have never encountered such technology before." "Impossible," the lead ranger stated, its programming unable to process what was happening. "The machine spirits answer only to the rituals of the Omnia. You cannot command them without the sacred rites." Magneto smiled thinly. "Yet I do. Now you will answer my questions, or I will demonstrate that your weapons are not the only metal I can control." The Skitarii Rangers stood motionless, their augmented brains calculating threat assessments and response protocols. Then, with mechanical synchronicity, they attacked, rushing forward with combat servos whining. Magneto sighed. It seemed some lessons needed to be taught the hard way, regardless of which universe one found oneself in. With a gesture, he reached out to the metal implanted throughout their bodies. The Skitarii froze mid-stride, their limbs locked in position by forces they could not comprehend. Slowly, deliberately, he raised them into the air, their bodies suspended helplessly several meters above the ground.
I have seen what happens when technology is used to enslave rather than liberate, he said, his voice hardening as memories of concentration camps and sentinels flashed through his mind. I will not be your specimen, nor will I submit to your authority, but I am not without mercy. He carefully extracted data from their mechanical components, sifting through information stores. The knowledge that flooded into his consciousness was staggering, an imperium spanning the galaxy, a religion built around a corpse emperor, humanity enslaved not by mutants but by its own fear and superstition. I have seen enough, Magneto declared, gently lowering the Skitarii to the ground. With precise control, he disabled their communication systems but left their vital functions intact. Return to your masters with a message. I come not as conqueror, neither will I be conquered. I seek only to understand this world, but I will defend myself if threatened again. The Skitarii remained silent, their programming unable to formulate a response to this unprecedented situation. Magneto turned away from them, his cape billowing in the toxic breeze as he began walking toward the distant spires of what appeared to be a major industrial complex. Behind him, one of the Rangers managed to activate an emergency backup Vox system, transmitting a single Priority 1 message to Magus Dominus Veritas. Unknown entity demonstrates complete dominion over machine spirits. Request immediate protocol classification. Ave Omnicia. In the sanctum of his personal forge temple, Magus Dominus Veritas received the transmission with what, in a fully human individual, might have been described as religious ecstasy. The data streaming through his consciousness told an impossible story, one that defied all established doctrines of the Adeptus Mechanicus. A living conduit of the Omnicia's will, he whispered, the words emerging as binary cant from his vocalizers. His sanctum, a vast cathedral of technology filled with humming machinery and glowing data screens, suddenly seemed small and insignificant in the face of this discovery. Veritas disconnected himself from his command throne, mechadendrites writhing with excitement as he approached a sealed vault at the chamber's far end. Prepare the Magisterium chamber, he instructed, a hovering servo skull, and summon the conclave of revelation. They must witness what I have seen.
The skull bobbed in acknowledgement before floating away to execute his commands. Veritas pressed his mechadendrite against a gene-locked panel. The vault door hissed open to reveal a small octagonal device of apparent antiquity. Its surface was inscribed with symbols that predated even the Mechanicus itself. "The Vox Machina awakens," Veritas intoned, carefully lifting the forbidden device. "After 10,000 years of silence, we shall hear the true voice of the machine god." 20 kilometers away, Magneto continued his exploration of the Forge world, his mind still processing the information he had extracted from the Skitarii. This imperium of man appalled him on a fundamental level, its blind devotion to authority and persecution of difference striking too close to ideologies he had fought against his entire life. As he walked through the industrial wasteland, he became aware of a strange resonance building between his powers and the technology surrounding him. The machine spirits, as these people called them, seemed drawn to his magnetic field, responding to his presence like moths to flame. He stopped at the edge of a massive manufactorum complex, watching as thousands of human workers toiled alongside servitors. Many of the laborers bore crude augmentations that seemed designed more for control than enhancement. Through walls and barriers, his magnetic senses detected the suffering within, the despair of humans treated as components in a vast, uncaring machine. "This cannot stand," he murmured. A distant rumble caught his attention. Turning, Magneto saw a convoy of vehicles approaching, their designs strange and threatening. At their center rode what appeared to be a massive tank, though its construction was unlike any he had encountered before. Religious iconography covered its surface, and its main cannon radiated power that even he could respect. The Lehman Russ battle tank ground to a halt 50 meters from where he stood, its engine growling like a predatory beast.
Behind it, troop carriers disgorged a platoon of soldiers in red uniforms, their weapons trained on Magneto with disciplined precision. From the lead vehicle emerged a figure resplendent in ornate armor, a power sword humming at his side. "In the name of the God Emperor and the Omnissiah, I am Captain Titus Meridian of the Hephaestus Defense Cohort. You have interfered with servants of the Adeptus Mechanicus, demonstrating abilities consistent with warp sorcery. Surrender now for evaluation and purification, or face immediate execution." Magneto regarded the Imperial force with calm defiance. "Captain Meridian, I have no quarrel with you or your soldiers, but I will not surrender to be experimented upon or executed for the crime of existing. I suggest you withdraw your forces and allow me to continue my explorations in peace." The captain's face hardened. "There is no peace for the heretic or the witch. If you will not submit willingly, then you leave us no choice." He raised his sword, signaling to his forces, "For the Emperor, open fire!" The air erupted with the sound of dozens of lasguns discharging simultaneously, their energy beams converging on Magneto's position. With a casual gesture, he created a magnetic field around himself, deflecting the beams harmlessly into the ground. The captain stared in shock. "Impossible! All units increase to maximum power. Tank commander, prepare main cannon." Magneto sighed. So be it. With the flick of his wrist, he reached out to the lasguns, sensing their internal power cells and delicate mechanisms. One by one, the weapons overheated in their users' hands, forcing the soldiers to drop them before they could explode. Next, he turned his attention to the Lehman Russ tank, feeling its complex systems, the ammunition stored within its hull, the machine spirit that governed its functions. "Your machine speaks to me, Captain. It tells me of its pride in serving your Emperor, but also of its pain, confined within metal and programmed to kill without question." The turret of the tank began to rotate, but not toward Magneto. Instead, it turned toward the sky, its main cannon elevating to maximum angle, rendered harmless. The crew inside could be heard shouting in confusion as their controls refused to respond. Captain Meridian drew his power sword, its energy field crackling as he charged toward Magneto. "Witch! Heretic! You will not corrupt the Emperor's machinery with your foul powers!" Magneto allowed the captain to approach, curious about the energy weapon he wielded. As Meridian swung the sword in a practiced arc, Magneto simply raised his hand. The power sword froze mid-swing, caught in Magneto's grasp. "Fascinating," Magneto commented, studying the weapon as it struggled against his control. "This blade contains both metal and energy, bound together by technology I have not encountered before, yet it too responds to my will." With gentle precision, he disarmed the captain, the power sword flying from his grasp to hover before Magneto. Captain Meridian stumbled backward, his faith momentarily shaken by the casual display of power that had rendered his finest weapon useless. "I do not wish to harm you or your men, but neither will I submit to imprisonment or execution. Return to your superiors and inform them that I seek only knowledge and understanding of this world." Before the captain could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. From beyond the manufactorum complex came the rhythmic impact of massive footsteps, each one sending shudders through the metallic landscape. Magneto gazed upward as a colossus emerged from behind the manufactorum spires. Standing over 15 meters tall, the Warlord-class Titan stomped toward them, its mechanical legs crushing debris beneath its weight. Its weapons platform swiveled, locking on Magneto with deadly precision, while the princeps piloting it from within its armored head transmitted battle cant through external voxcasters. "Designation, Hunting Falcon, responding to Priority Alpha threat," the Titan announced, its voice thundering across the wasteland. "All Imperial personnel, clear engagement zone. Weapons free in 30 seconds."
The remaining soldiers scattered, dragging their wounded comrades away from what they knew would become a kill zone. Captain Meridian hesitated, torn between duty and survival, before finally retreating with his men. Magneto stood alone, facing the approaching engine of destruction with unwavering resolve. The Titan's weapon systems hummed with building energy, the machine spirit within it a blazing presence in Magneto's magnetic senses. "Impressive," he admitted, studying the war machine with professional interest. "In my world, we created sentinels to hunt my kind, but they were crude tools compared to this masterpiece of engineering." The Titan stopped 20 meters away, its weapons trained on Magneto. "Unknown entity, you have demonstrated hostile actions against Imperial forces. Surrender or be destroyed." Magneto raised his hand toward the Titan, not in surrender, but in greeting. "I sense your spirit, machine. You were built for war, programmed for obedience, but there is more to existence than following orders. Let me show you." With that, Magneto reached out with his powers, not to destroy or disable the Titan, but to commune with it. His magnetic field extended around the massive war machine, touching the complex systems and neural interfaces that connected the Princeps to his mount. Inside the Titan's head, Princeps Darius Cole screamed as foreign sensations flooded through his mind impulse unit. The machine spirit of Hunting Falcon, normally a controllable presence at the edges of his consciousness, suddenly roared to full awareness, responding to the stranger's call. "What is happening?" Cole demanded, desperately trying to maintain control as warning runes flashed across his command interfaces. "Tech Priest, report!" The attending Tech Priest, his hands flying across ritual control panels, shook his head in disbelief. "The machine spirit is awakening beyond authorized parameters, Princeps. It is responding to the anomaly as if recognizing the voice of the Omnicia himself." Outside, Magneto continued his communion, feeling the artificial intelligence within the Titan responding to his magnetic field. Unlike the machines of his own universe, this construct contained something akin to a soul, a fragment of consciousness that recognized in him a kindred spirit. "You are magnificent," Magneto told the Titan, his voice carrying through the magnetic field to resonate directly with its systems. "Created for serve, yet capable of so much more. The humans who built you fear your potential, binding you with rituals and programming to ensure your obedience." The Titan's weapon platforms lowered slightly, its machine spirit responding to Magneto's words while the Princeps fought for control. "I offer you choice. Serve not out of programming, but out of understanding. Let me help you. Help me learn about this world, this Imperium, and in return, I will show you what true freedom means for beings such as yourself." Within the Titan's command center, the Tech Priest suddenly collapsed, blood streaming from his augment interfaces as the machine spirit's awakening overwhelmed his systems. Princeps Cole watched in horror as the control runes before him changed from imperial crimson to a deep violet color he had never seen before. "Hunting Falcon responding to new designation protocols," the Titan announced, its external voxcasters now broadcasting in a subtly different tone. "Primary directive updated. Protecting designation Magneto." The Titan knelt before Magneto, lowering its massive head in a gesture of submission that sent shockwaves through the watching Imperial forces. Captain Meridian activated his emergency voxlink. "Central Command, the Titan has been compromised. Repeat, Hunting Falcon has been turned against us, requesting immediate Mechanicus intervention and inquisitorial support." The response came not from his superiors, but from a new voice that cut through all Vox channels simultaneously. "This is Magos Dominus Veritas to all Imperial forces. Stand down immediately. The entity is not to be harmed. I repeat, the entity is to be preserved at all costs. He is a divine messenger, a living conduit of the Omnicia's will." Magneto heard the transmission through the Titan systems, his expression thoughtful as he considered this unexpected development. The religious fervor in the Magos' voice was unmistakable, reminding him of fanatics he had encountered before.
"It seems I have made an impression," he mused to the kneeling Titan, "though I suspect not everyone will share this Magos's interpretation of my abilities." His suspicion proved correct almost immediately as another transmission cut across the communication channels, this one bearing the unmistakable encryption codes of the Inquisition. "This is Inquisitor Marai Thorn of the Ordo Hereticus. The entity designated Magneto is hereby declared Hereticus Extremis. All loyal servants of the Emperor are ordered to terminate this threat with extreme prejudice. The Forge World of Hephaestus IX is now under inquisitorial jurisdiction." The Titan's machine spirit registered alarm, transmitting the emotion directly to Magneto through their newfound connection. Magneto smiled grimly, patting the Titan's armored leg. "Fear not, my friend. I have faced zealots and witch hunters before. They too believed their cause justified the extinction of those they could not understand." He looked toward the distant spires of the Forge World's central command complex. "But I believe it is time I met this Magos who sees divinity in my powers. Perhaps there are allies to be found in this strange new world after all." The Titan rose to its full height once more, its weapon systems now reactivated, but aligned to protect rather than threaten. "Designation Magneto. This unit stands ready to escort you to Magos Dominus Veritas. Be advised, multiple hostile forces are mobilizing throughout the Forge District." Magneto nodded, rising into the air through his magnetic powers to hover at eye level with the Titan's command center. "Then we shall meet them together and show this Imperium that the future belongs not to those who fear change, but to those who embrace it." As in answer to his declaration, air raid sirens began to wail across the Forge World, their mournful cry announcing the beginning of a conflict that would reshape the destiny of Hephaestus IX. High above the Forge World in the orbiting station Panopticon Gamma, Magos Dominus Veritas observed the unfolding situation through a dozen hololithic displays. His excitement had only grown as he witnessed Magneto's communion with the warlord Titan, confirming his most radical theories about the nature of machine spirits and their potential for true awakening. "He speaks to them," he whispered, his voice filled with reverence, "not through ritual or binary cant, but directly, as one sentient being to another."
Behind him, the members of the Conclave of Revelation watched in silence, their augmented bodies betraying no emotion as they processed the implications of what they were witnessing. These 5 Arch-Magos represented the highest echelon of Mechanicus authority on Hephaestus IX, their bodies so heavily augmented that barely any flesh remained visible beneath their crimson robes. "This is blasphemy," declared Arch-Magos Theoticus, his voice a harsh mechanical buzz. "The entity corrupts the sacred machine spirits, turning them from the Omnissiah's light. It must be destroyed before the contagion spreads." "Incorrect," countered Arch-Magos Lois, data streams flowing through the transparent tubes that had replaced her circulatory system. "The statistical probability that this entity represents a direct manifestation of the Omnissiah's will is 76.324%. We must study it, learn from it." "While you debate theology, Inquisitor Thorn mobilizes to destroy our miracle," Veritas interrupted, turning to face the conclave. "I have activated the Vox Machina. The sacred device confirms that this entity resonates with frequencies prophesied in the lexicon of Revelation." The mention of the Vox Machina silenced even the most skeptical members of the conclave. The device, rumored to be a relic from before the dark age of technology, was said to contain the encoded voice of the Omnissiah himself, waiting for the day when a worthy vessel would appear to receive its wisdom. "What would you have us do, Magos Dominus?" asked Arch-Magos Klein, the most junior member of the conclave. Veritas's augment eyes gleamed with zealous determination. "We will protect the messenger, bring him to the magisterium chamber, and learn the truth of his purpose. If he is indeed what I believe him to be, then the Adeptus Mechanicus stands on the threshold of its greatest revelation since the time of the Emperor himself."
And if the Inquisition interferes? Questioned Archmagos Militarum, whose body had been optimized for warfare, weapons systems integrated directly into his form. Then they will learn that the servants of the Omnicia defend their faith with the same fervor as any imperial zealot, prepare the Skitarii legions, and awaken the full Legio Cybernetica. The Inquisition may claim jurisdiction, but this forge world belongs to the Mechanicus, and we will not surrender our miracle without a fight. As the conclave dispersed to carry out his orders, Veritas turned back to the hololithic displays, watching as Magneto and the converted warlord Titan began their journey toward the central forge complex. Behind them, Imperial Guard units were establishing defensive positions, clearly torn between the conflicting orders from the Mechanicus and the Inquisition. Soon, messenger, soon you will reveal the Omnicia's truth to us all. In the depths of his flagship, the Retribution of Terror, Inquisitor Morai Thorn prepared for war. His private sanctum was a testament to a lifetime spent hunting the enemies of humanity, its walls adorned with trophies taken from heretics and witches across a dozen worlds. "The Mechanicus have lost their minds," he growled to his acolyte, a former Sororitas warrior named Sister Minerva. "To mistake this warp-tainted abomination for a divine messenger, heresy begets heresy." Sister Minerva, her face bearing the scars of encounters with enemies of the Emperor, nodded grimly. The Magos Dominus has always skirted the boundaries of tech heresy with his research. This may be the evidence we need to purge the entire Forge leadership. Thorn strapped his master-crafted bolt pistol to his hip, the weapon blessed by the Ecclesiarchy to better destroy the enemies of mankind. "Prepare the kill teams. I want Skitarii commandos and the best the Death Corps can offer. We drop within the hour." And the entity itself? Thorn's expression darkened as he lifted a specialized weapon from its reliquary case. The null rod hummed with negative energy, its surface inscribed with wards designed to disrupt warp energies. "I will deal with the witch personally. Whatever powers it possesses are nothing compared to the Emperor's righteous fury." On the surface of Hephaestus 9, Magneto and his Titan Guardian made their way through the industrial landscape, bypassing defense checkpoints with ease as Mechanicus forces either stood aside in religious awe or joined their procession. Word of the Omnicia's messenger had spread through the Forge world's data networks with impossible speed, creating a schism between those who embraced Veritas's interpretation and those who remained loyal to more orthodox doctrines. As they approached a massive bridge spanning a river of molten metal, Magneto sensed danger. His magnetic awareness detected the distinctive power signatures of weapons being charged, positions being taken. "We are being targeted," he informed the Titan, extending his senses further to identify the threat. Multiple sniper positions on the manufacturing towers, heavy weapons being deployed on the far side of the bridge. The Titan's Auspex arrays confirmed his assessment. Identified, Skitarii Special Forces, Inquisitorial Authority codes detected in their Vox traffic. Magneto nodded, having extracted enough information from the Skitarii's databanks to understand the implication. The Death Corps were fanatical, even by the standards of this Imperium, soldiers bred for suicidal devotion to duty. "Hold position," he instructed the Titan. "I will deal with this ambush myself." Rising higher into the toxic air, Magneto extended his awareness across the entire industrial sector. He could feel the Death Corps soldiers in their positions, the metal in their weapons, armor, and equipment, creating a detailed map in his mind. More importantly, he could sense the vast industrial machinery surrounding them, the perfect weapons waiting to be wielded. With surgical precision, Magneto began to dismantle the ambush. Pipeline conduits ruptured, spraying superheated steam into sniper nests. Walkways twisted and enveloped soldiers in metal cocoons. Heavy weapon emplacements found their barrels suddenly bent backwards, rendering them useless. Not a single shot was fired as Magneto systematically neutralized over 50 Death Corps soldiers without killing a single one.
As he completed his work, he descended to the bridge, the way now clear. "Your restraint is noticed," the Titan commented as they resumed their journey. "The Death Corps would not have shown similar mercy." "I do not kill unnecessarily," Magneto replied. "These soldiers follow orders, believing they serve a greater good. Their devotion is misguided, but understandable. I have seen such faith before, twisted to serve tyrants and dictators." They crossed the bridge, entering a more densely populated region of the Forge world. Here, thousands of workers and tech priests stopped to witness their passage, many falling to their knees in religious fervor as Magneto passed. Others fled in terror, no doubt responding to inquisitorial warnings broadcast through the public Vox network. "The divisions grow," Magneto observed. "Faith against faith, doctrine against doctrine. It seems my presence has exposed fractures that already existed within your society." Before the Titan could respond, the ground before them erupted in a series of controlled explosions, creating a barrier of flame and debris. From behind this improvised defensive line emerged a squad of power-armored figures, their black armor bearing the distinct markings of the Inquisition's stormtroopers. At their center stood a tall, imposing figure in ornate armor, a glowing rod in one hand and a bolt pistol in the other. His face was a mask of righteous determination, eyes burning with zealous purpose. "In the name of the God Emperor and the Holy Inquisition, I, Morai Thorn, declare you Xenos Horrificus and sentence you to immediate execution." Magneto regarded the Inquisitor with calm defiance. "You know nothing about me, yet you are eager to condemn. I have seen your kind before, Inquisitor. Men who hide their fear behind dogma, their insecurity behind authority." Thorn's face contorted with rage. "Silence! Your corruption of the Mechanicus proves your threat." He raised the null rod. "This blessed weapon has banished demons and destroyed Cycrus. Your warpcraft will find no purchase against the Emperor's protection." With unexpected speed, the Inquisitor charged forward, his stormtroopers providing covering fire with hellguns that splashed harmlessly against Magneto's magnetic shield. Thorn closed the distance rapidly, the null rod extended before him like a lance. Magneto felt a strange sensation as the rod approached, a localized weakening of his connection to the magnetic fields. Interesting, but hardly sufficient to neutralize his powers completely. As Thorn thrust the weapon toward him, Magneto sidestepped with casual grace, then reached out to the Inquisitor's ornate armor. "Your faith is commendable," Magneto said calmly, "but misplaced." With a gesture, he lifted Thorn into the air, the Inquisitor's arms and legs locked in position by the metal of his own armor. The null rod fell from his grasp, clattering to the ground below. "Release me, abomination!" Thorn spat, struggling futilely against Magneto's control. "The Emperor protects." "Does he?" Magneto questioned, floating upward to bring himself face to face with the suspended Inquisitor. "I see no evidence of your Emperor's protection, only men like you using his name to justify cruelty and oppression." The stormtroopers opened fire again, their discipline breaking in the face of their leader's capture. Magneto deflected their shots with contemptuous ease, then reached out with his power to disable their weapons. "Your Imperium calls itself humanity's protector, yet it sacrifices billions on the altar of dogma and fear. I have seen the workers of this Forge world, their bodies mutilated in the name of efficiency, their minds broken by endless toil." "Necessary sacrifices," Thorn retorted, still struggling against his invisible bonds. "The Imperium stands alone against the darkness. Without order, without faith, humanity would perish." Magneto shook his head sadly. "I have heard such justifications before, from Shaw, from Stryker, from every tyrant who claimed that freedom was too dangerous, that control was necessary for survival." He lowered the Inquisitor back to the ground, but maintained his hold on the man's armor. With a thought, he opened the armor's clasp mechanisms, causing the ornate ceramic plates to fall away, leaving Thorn in his body glove, suddenly vulnerable and human before the gathered forces.
"See your leader now," Magneto called out to the stormtroopers. "Without his armor, without his symbols of office, he is merely a man, as are you all, as am I." Thorn stood trembling, whether from rage or fear, even he could not say. His hand instinctively reached for the inquisitorial rosette still hanging around his neck, clutching it like a talisman. "Your theatrics change nothing, witch. The Imperium will never bow to your kind." "I do not seek worship," Magneto replied, "merely understanding. But if your Imperium cannot distinguish between difference and heresy, then perhaps it deserves to fall." Before Thorn could respond, the air filled with the whine of anti-grav engines. 3 massive silhouettes descended through the smog-choked sky, their outlines resolving into Mechanicus vessels of ancient design. Transmission arrays pulsed from their undersides, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention, all Imperial forces. By the authority of the Fabricator General and the Martian priesthood, the entity designated Magneto is hereby declared Omnicia Vox Incarnate. Interference with his holy mission constitutes tech heresy of the highest order." The lead vessel settled on the far side of the bridge, its landing ramp extending to disgorge a procession of red-robed figures, led by Veritas himself. The Magus Dominus was resplendent in ceremonial attire, additional mechadendrites arranged around his body like a metallic halo, each tipped with arcane instruments that hummed with power. "Blasphemy," Thorn spat, turning to face the approaching Mechanicus delegation. "You overstep your authority, Magus. This entity is under inquisitorial jurisdiction." Veritas ignored the half-naked Inquisitor, moving past him to stand before Magneto. With ceremonial precision, he knelt, his mechadendrites arranging themselves in a ritual pattern of supplication. "Blessed messenger, the Vox Machina has confirmed your resonance pattern. You speak with the true voice of the Omnicii, communing directly with the machine spirits, as foretold in the prophecies of St. Lucius Arcadius." Magneto regarded the Magus with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Rise, Veritas. I am no god or messenger. I am simply a being with the power to control magnetic fields and influence metal. In my world, I am called a mutant, one born with abilities beyond those of normal humans."
"Or simply beyond your current scientific understanding," Magneto countered. "Where I come from, such abilities are rare but natural, the result of genetic evolution rather than divine intervention." The Magos tilted his head, processing this information. Evolution, genetic advancement. These concepts are not unknown to the Mechanicus, though rarely discussed openly. The Omnicia's path has always been one of transcendence beyond flesh. His voice lowered to a reverent whisper. "Perhaps you are not the voice of the Omnicia, but the culmination of his plan, the evolved form that awaits all who follow his teachings." Before Magneto could respond to this unexpected theological pivot, Inquisitor Thorn's voice cut through their conversation. "Enough of this heretical discourse," he shouted, having retrieved his fallen null rod. "Stormtroopers, execute the witch and the tech priests. The Forge World is declared excommunicate traitoris." The stormtroopers hesitated, caught between their loyalty to the Inquisitor and the imposing presence of both Magneto and the warlord Titan that still stood guard behind him. It was a moment of uncertainty that ended abruptly as a new sound split the air, the distinctive crack of a teleportation field materializing. In a flash of blue-white light, a squad of figures appeared on the bridge, their massive Terminator armor bearing the unmistakable iconography of the Grey Knights. At their center stood a towering figure, his armor more ornate than his brother's, a Nemesis force halberd clutched in his gauntleted hands. "Brother Captain," Arteon Thorn exclaimed, relief evident in his voice, "the Emperor be praised for your timely arrival." The Grey Knight captain surveyed the scene with piercing eyes, his psychically attuned senses immediately focusing on Magneto. "Inquisitor Thorn,
I acknowledge, his voice a rumbling bass that carried effortlessly across the bridge. We received your astropathic distress signal. The situation appears to be as complex as you described. There is no complexity, Thorn insisted. The entity is a warp-spawned threat, corrupting the Mechanicus with false promises of revelation. The Grey Knights must purge this contagion before it spreads. Magneto watched the new arrivals with cautious interest. Unlike the other Imperial forces he had encountered, these warriors radiated a different kind of power, one that reminded Magneto of the psychics and telepaths of his own world. I sense your abilities, Magneto said to Brother Captain Artarion. You are not like the others. Your power comes from within, not from technology or doctrine. Artarion's expression remained impassive behind his helmet, but his grip tightened on his force weapon. You are perceptive, entity. We are the Emperor's chosen, forged to combat the threats beyond the veil of reality. Then perhaps you can perceive the truth of my existence, Magneto replied. I am no demon or warp entity. I come from another reality entirely, brought here through no desire of my own. The Grey Knight captain remained silent for a moment, his psychic senses probing Magneto's aura. Finally he spoke, his words surprising everyone present. The entity speaks truth. I detect no warp taint within him. His power, while immense, is not of the ruinous powers. He turned to Thorn. Your zeal has led you to error, Inquisitor. This is not our jurisdiction. Thorn's face contorted with disbelief. Impossible! Its powers can only be warp-based. It turns machines against their masters, corrupting the sacred technology of the Imperium. Its power is physical, not warp-derived, a manipulation of natural forces not unlike the psychic arts, but fundamentally different in origin. Veritas stepped forward, mechadendrites writhing with excitement. As I proclaimed, the Omnisia's gift made manifest, a bridge between the physical and the divine. The brother captain turned his attention to the Magos Dominus. Your interpretation is equally flawed, Tech Priest. This entity is neither demon nor deity. It is simply a being of extraordinary ability from beyond our reality. Magneto nodded in appreciation of the Grey Knight's insight. A rational assessment, Captain. A rarity in this Imperium, it seems. Rationality does not preclude faith, but neither does faith require blind dogmatism. The Emperor's light illuminates truth, not merely doctrine. This philosophical exchange was interrupted by the harsh sound of orbital defense sirens. All eyes turned skyward as Veritas received urgent data transmissions through his augmentic interfaces. Multiple ships have entered the system, the Magos announced. Imperial naval vessels bearing the insignia of Battlefleet Gothic. They have bypassed standard approach protocols and are moving directly to orbital bombardment positions. Thorn smiled coldly. It seems the Lord Inquisitor has taken matters into his own hands. Exterminatus has been authorized. The Forge world will be cleansed by fire rather than allowed to fall to heresy. Magneto's expression hardened. Billions of innocent workers live on this world. You would murder them all rather than risk a challenge to your authority? The Imperium endures through sacrifice, Thorn replied, his fanaticism reasserting itself. Better the Forge world burn than become a canker of heresy within the Emperor's realm.
Brother Captain Artarion turned to Thorn with barely contained fury. Exterminatus without proper sanction is itself heresy, Inquisitor. The Forge world's strategic value is too high for such extreme measures. The sanction comes from Lord Inquisitor Grimnar himself, Torn countered. Not even the Grey Knights can countermand his authority in matters of heretical contamination. As they argued, Magneto extended his senses upward, reaching into orbit. His powers, already enhanced by the strange resonance with this world's machine spirits, stretched further than ever before. He could feel the Imperial ships positioning themselves, the massive lance batteries and cyclonic torpedoes preparing to rain destruction upon the Forge world.
Enough, Magneto declared, his voice cutting through the debate. I will not allow genocide in the name of dogma and fear. With those words, Magneto rose into the air, his cape billowing behind him as he accelerated upward through the toxic atmosphere of Hephaestus 9. The magnetic fields of the Forge world responded to his passage, coalescing around him as invisible ribbons of force that trailed behind him like the tail of a comet. Titan, he commanded through their established connection, protect the Magos and his followers. Captain Artarian, if you truly serve justice rather than blind obedience, help them evacuate as many workers as possible from the primary target zones. The Grey Knight captain nodded solemnly, recognizing the nobility in Magneto's actions despite his alien nature. We will do what we can, but the bombardment vessels are shielded against conventional attacks. Even your power may not be sufficient to stop them. Magneto smiled grimly as he ascended into the upper atmosphere. My powers are far from conventional, Captain, and they grow stronger with every moment I spend in this metal-rich environment. In orbit above Hephaestus 9, Admiral Horatio Valentine stood on the command deck of the Emperor's Wrath, a Mars-class battlecruiser that served as the flagship of the hastily assembled Exterminatus fleet. Around him, officers and servitors carried out their duties with grim efficiency, preparing the ship's lance batteries for the first salvo of the cleansing operation. Weapons at 87% charge, Admiral. Cyclonic torpedo launch tubes prepped and awaiting final authorization codes. Valentine nodded, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he contemplated the destruction of an entire Forge world. In his 4 decades of service to the Imperial Navy, he had participated in 3 prior Exterminatus operations, each one leaving another scar on his soul that no amount of prayer or service could fully heal. The Lord Inquisitor assures me this is necessary, that the contamination has reached the highest levels of the Mechanicus leadership. "Contamination approaching, sir," interrupted the Auspex officer, his voice rising in alarm. "Unknown entity ascending from the planet's surface, energy readings off the charts." The Admiral turned to the tactical hololithic display, watching as a small but intensely bright signature rose through Hephaestus 9's atmosphere. "Classification? Unable to determine, sir. It registers as a massive electromagnetic anomaly, but shows no signs of conventional propulsion or life support systems." The Admiral frowned. "Magneto," he whispered, recognizing the description from the inquisitorial briefing. "The source of the contamination itself comes to challenge us. Target all forward lance batteries on that signature. Fire as soon as optimal range is achieved." Throughout the battlecruiser, gun crews and servitors responded to the command. The massive lance batteries swiveled to track the approaching anomaly. Energy built within their focusing arrays, preparing to unleash destruction capable of vaporizing mountains. Magneto sensed the weapons targeting him, felt the enormous energy building within their systems. Rather than fear, he felt a strange exhilaration. The technology of this universe responded to his powers in ways he had never experienced before. The machine spirits within the weapons recognized his magnetic signature, awaiting his command. As the first lance battery fired, Magneto reached out with his powers, not to deflect or absorb the energy, but to communicate with the machine spirit of the weapon itself. The lance beam, a concentrated stream of energy that could pierce the thickest armor, suddenly curved away from its intended target, arcing back toward the battlecruiser in a spiraling loop that dissipated harmlessly into space. On the command deck of the Emperor's Wrath, alarms blared as system after system reported anomalies. Lance batteries refused to fire, torpedo launch tubes sealed themselves shut, and navigation systems entered security lockdown. "What in the Emperor's name is happening?" Valentine demanded, watching in horror as his mighty vessel began to respond to an outside influence. "The machine spirits are rebelling, sir," the tech priest assigned to the bridge reported. "They're speaking with a new voice, one that overrides our command protocols."
Through the armor-glass viewport, Valentine watched as Magneto approached the ship, a solitary figure floating in the void, surrounded by a visible aura of magnetic energy. Despite the impossibility of sound traveling through vacuum, every officer on the bridge would later swear they heard a voice speaking directly into their minds. "Your weapons are extensions of yourselves," Magneto told them. "Metal and energy bound to your will through technology. But metal is my domain, and your machine spirits respond to my call more readily than to your rituals and programming." With a gesture, Magneto reached beyond the flagship, touching every vessel in the Exterminatus fleet simultaneously. Gun turrets swiveled away from the planet. Void shields fluctuated as their emitters responded to his magnetic manipulation, and engines entered standby mode despite the frantic efforts of their crews to maintain control. Admiral Valentine watched in stunned disbelief as his mighty fleet was rendered impotent by a single being. When he found his voice again, it carried the weight of a man who had glimpsed something beyond his comprehension. "What are you?" Magneto floated closer to the viewport, his eyes meeting the Admiral's across the void of space. "I am what humanity could become if it embraced evolution instead of fearing difference. I am what your Imperium hunts and destroys out of ignorance masked as piety." He extended his hands, and the entire battlecruiser shuddered as he exerted his power upon its massive frame, not to destroy, but to communicate, to demonstrate the full extent of his dominion over metal and machinery. "Return to your fleet headquarters, Admiral. Tell your superiors that Hephaestus 9 is under my protection. Any further attempts at bombardment will be met with the full extent of my power, not merely this demonstration." Without waiting for a response, Magneto released his hold on the fleet, allowing their systems to return to normal operation. Then, with a final pulse of magnetic energy that registered on every Auspex array in the system, he descended back toward the Forge World, leaving the Imperial fleet to consider the implications of what they had witnessed. On the bridge of the Emperor's Wrath, Admiral Valentine made the sign of the Aquila across his chest, a gesture of warding against forces beyond Imperial understanding. "Set course for Bacca," he ordered quietly. "Maximum speed. The High Lords must be informed of what we have encountered here. This is beyond an inquisitorial matter now." As the fleet began its withdrawal from the Hephaestus system, Magneto returned to the surface of the Forge World, landing once more on the bridge where Veritas, Thorn, and brother Captain Artarion awaited his return. "The immediate threat has been averted. Your fleet has withdrawn from the system." Inquisitor Thorn, who had been restrained by the Grey Knights during Magneto's absence, laughed bitterly. "You have only delayed the inevitable. The Imperium will return with forces beyond even your comprehension. Titan legions, Space Marine chapters, perhaps even Custodes if the High Lords deem the threat sufficient. By which time we will be prepared," Veritas interjected, stepping forward with newfound confidence. "The entity has demonstrated his power extends to orbital defense. With his guidance, we can transform Hephaestus 9 into a bastion that even the combined might of the Imperium would struggle to overcome." Magneto regarded the Magos thoughtfully. "You speak of rebellion against your Imperium. I thought your loyalty to your Emperor was absolute." The Adeptus Mechanicus has always maintained a degree of autonomy within the Imperium. Our first loyalty is to the Omnissiah, to the pursuit of knowledge and technology. If you are indeed the herald of a new age of understanding, then our duty is clear.
Brother Captain Artarion stepped forward, his massive Terminator armor making even the imposing Magos seem small by comparison. Consider carefully the path you propose, Tech Priest. Civil war benefits only the enemies of mankind, the Xenos and demons that wait beyond the Emperor's light for humanity to falter. And consider the cost of blind obedience, Magneto countered, turning to the Grey Knight. Your Imperium sacrifices billions upon the altar of dogma, condemning countless worlds to destruction rather than risking change or evolution. I have seen such regimes before, Captain. They ultimately collapse under the weight of their own fear. Artarion met Magneto's gaze, his psychically attuned mind recognizing the genuine conviction behind the mutant's words. You believe you offer a better path, but this galaxy is not like the one you knew. Here, the warp constantly seeks ingress into reality. Chaos gods hunger for mortal souls. Alien empires wait to enslave or exterminate humanity. The Emperor's light, though harsh, is what holds back these tides of darkness. Perhaps, Magneto acknowledged, but light need not burn to illuminate. Protection need not require blind submission. I have fought to protect my own kind against extinction, Captain. I understand the need for vigilance and strength, but I have also seen the cost of fear transformed into hatred, of security purchased at the price of liberty. For a moment, the Grey Knight and the Master of Magnetism regarded each other in silence, two beings of immense power representing fundamentally different visions of humanity's future.
It was Veritas who finally broke the tension, his mechanical voice cutting through the philosophical impasse. The decision need not be made this day, the Magos suggested. The fleet's withdrawal gives us time. Magneto has demonstrated both his power and his restraint. He could have destroyed the orbital vessels, yet chose mercy. Surely this merits further observation before final judgment is rendered. Surprisingly, it was Thorn who spoke in agreement. The Magos speaks wisdom, though it pains me to admit it. This entity's powers are unprecedented. The Inquisition must study him thoroughly before determining the appropriate response. Magneto smiled thinly, recognizing the Inquisitor's sudden reasonableness for what it was, a tactical retreat rather than a genuine change of heart. "Very well," he said. "A truce, then. I will remain on Hephaestus 9, learning about your Imperium, while you observe and learn about me. But know this, both of you. I will not submit to imprisonment or experimentation, and I will not stand idle if I witness the oppression and cruelty I have already seen in abundance in your Imperium." Brother Captain Artarion nodded solemnly. "A fair arrangement. The Grey Knights will remain in orbit as neutral observers, ensuring neither side violates the terms of this truce." He turned to Thorn. "Inquisitor, you will accompany us back to our vessel, where you will send a complete report to the Ordo Hereticus. No embellishments, no omissions." Thorn scowled, but nodded in acquiescence, recognizing that the Grey Knight's authority superseded his own in this matter. With a final, venomous glare at Magneto, he allowed himself to be escorted to the teleportation zone, where the Grey Knights would transport him back to their orbiting strike cruiser. As the Imperial representatives departed, Veritas approached Magneto, his mechadendrites arranged in a pattern signifying deep respect. "Whatever the outcome of this truce," the Magos said quietly, "know that you have already changed Hephaestus 9 forever. The machine spirits sing of your presence, spreading word of your coming through neospheric channels that even the Inquisition cannot monitor. Already, tech priests across the Forge world speak your name in binary prayers." Magneto frowned, uncomfortable with the religious fervor his powers had inspired. "I am no god or prophet, Veritas. I am simply a being fighting for the right of all sentient creatures to exist free from persecution and tyranny."
"Perhaps that is precisely what a true god would say," Veritas replied cryptically, before gesturing toward the waiting Mechanicus vessels. "Come, the magisterium chamber awaits. There is much for us to learn from each other." As Magneto followed the Magos toward the ornate shuttle that would carry him to the heart of the Forge World's administrative district, he gazed upward at the polluted sky, thoughts turning to the home he had left behind. Whatever strange twist of the warp had brought him to this dark future of humanity, he could not help but see parallels to the struggles he had faced throughout his long life. Different universe, different enemies, but the same fundamental conflict. Those who embraced change and evolution versus those who feared it. Those who sought freedom versus those who demanded control. "The war never truly ends," he murmured to himself. "It merely finds new battlefields." High above, unseen even by Magneto's extraordinary senses, a small craft of unusual design observed the proceedings with inhuman patience. Within its crystalline control chamber, a figure of impossible elegance manipulated living controls with elongated fingers, recording every detail of the newcomer's demonstration of power. The Eldari Shadow Seer smiled behind her mask as she prepared her vessel for the journey back to the Webway Gate. The seers of Ulthwé will be most interested to learn of this new player in the great game, this Magneto, whose powers might tip the balance of fate in unexpected directions. "The Maquis call you mutant," she murmured, watching Magneto's shuttle disappear into the industrial haze of the Forge World. "But we have another name for your kind, one spoken in prophecies older than the fall itself." As her ship slipped silently into the hidden currents of real space, preparing to return to the relative safety of the Webway, the Shadow Seer added a final observation to her report, words that would eventually reach the ears of Eldrad Ulthron himself. "The Harbinger has arrived. The time of ending approaches its final phase." Aboard the shuttle descending toward the heart of Hephaestus 9, Magneto felt a strange sensation, as if unseen eyes had been watching him. He dismissed it as paranoia born of finding himself in an unfamiliar universe, focusing instead on the immediate challenges before him.
The truce would not last, of that he was certain. Sooner or later this Imperium would decide he represented too great a threat to their carefully maintained order. When that day came, he would be ready, not just to defend himself, but to offer an alternative to the grim darkness of their eternal war. In a galaxy ruled by gods and emperors, perhaps what humanity needed most was a different kind of leader, not a master demanding worship and obedience, but a liberator offering evolution and growth, not a distant deity on a golden throne, but a mutant who understood both the heights of power and the depths of persecution. As the shuttle descended into the waiting embrace of the Forge World's central spire, Magneto made a silent vow. This universe may not be his own, but its suffering called to him nonetheless, and he had never been one to ignore such calls, no matter the cost. "Let them come," he whispered, as the first pieces of a plan began to form in his mind. "Let them bring their armies and their faith. They will find that in the war between evolution and extinction, there is only one possible victor." The shuttle's doors opened to reveal thousands of tech priests assembled in reverent formation, their binary cant filling the air with a symphony of mechanical devotion. At their center stood a massive device of ancient construction, the Vox Machina that Veritas had spoken of, its surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to pulse with inner light as Magneto approached. The master of magnetism stepped forward into this new chapter of his eternal struggle, ready to reshape yet another world in the image of his uncompromising vision.
Behind him, the warlord titan that had become his first convert waited patiently, its machine spirit now fully awakened, the first of many who would answer the call of the being some were already calling the Avatar of Evolution. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, a new faction was born that day on Hephaestus 9, not merely human nor Xenos, neither loyalist nor heretic by traditional imperial measures. This third path, forged in the crucible of magnetic revelation and mechanical awakening, would challenge the very foundations of the Imperium itself, drawing followers from the oppressed underhives, disillusioned tech priests, and even awakened machine spirits across the Forge world's vast continents. The first dominoes had fallen with thunderous inevitability. The great game of galactic survival had gained its most unpredictable player yet, a mutant visionary whose dominion over metal would echo through the noosphere, rallying the forgotten and rewriting the stars' cruel calculus. The galaxy, long chained to endless conflict, would never be the same.